Every raider in Boston liked violence a lot, but the Grinch, who lived in Sanctuary Hills, did not. The Grinch hated violence, the bloodshed, the treason. Now please don't ask why, no one quite knows the reason. But the point of this run, for those of you tracking, is to beat Fallout 4 without ever attacking. The rules of this run are displayed here on screen. To make me rhyme this would just be obscene. Now what's an attack? Well here, take a look. These are the rules from which this run was took. Now that the rules are out of the way, our story begins like any other day. He had just sat down for his show that was streaming. But 5 minutes later, he was running and screaming. "The bombs have come! Just look at them fly!" The Grinch said while watching all the nukes in the sky. As he went underground, he didn't think twice, as the Vault-Tec rep put the Grinch here on ice. As he woke from his pod in which he'd been chilled, the Grinch witnessed his dear wife being killed. They kidnapped his son and left him to freeze. This left the Grinch with a sense of unease. The Grinch once again was now truly free, but all he could do was sneak away and flee. For the creatures of the vault, they wanted to play, but the Grinch saw fit to lock them away. For to leave the vault now, he would need to be hidden, as to leave while in combat was strictly forbidden. Now this run takes a while, as straight out the gate, we have to grind until we're level 28. By scrapping and scraping, we can get where we need. But by the end of this grind, my fingers will bleed. Now once I've gained a few handy perks, we set off to find the old ironworks. Inside is a book that we need to find, so we run past the locals who don't seem to mind. Finding our prize, we leave out the door, but the rest of this grind is truly a bore. We set up our land to produce lots of water, to kill the economy like lambs to a slaughter. At Diamond City we can buy what we need, through bartering off all our Nestle-styled greed. I won't lie to you, this process took weeks. But that's just info for all of the geeks. With book in hand and materials to spare, we proceed to build statues all over the square. By the end of the grind, we pick up our prize. Science level 3 to make ourselves wise. It was just around now that things were made clear. That the Grinch had a wonderful, awful idea. We could make ourselves a foul Christmas sweater, which would enable this run right down to the letter. Now I know what to do, the Grinch laughed in his throat. I'll head downtown and steal a hat and a coat. And he chuckled and chuckled. What a wonderful trick! With this coat and this hat, I look just like Saint Nick. And off the Grinch went, burning with passion, to show off to the locals his deadliest fashion. For to deal any damage, we can just stand still, and kill off our enemies through sheer force of will. But one isn't enough, the Grinch said with a smirk. I must make many more! And he got back to work. The Grinch snuck around through all sorts of weather, in the name of finishing his evil endeavor. He snuck by the raiders, their beasts and their bolts. Every item he found, he took. There were lots. By the end of this spree, he had satisfied his thirsting. His pockets were full, and his wardrobe was bursting. Now to track down his son, he'd need someone effective, so the Grinch went to find Diamond City's detective. But our luck had run short, as the Grinch had just learned that the only detective had never returned. He told dear Ellie there was no need to worry. He'd find the detective and be back in a hurry. So the Grinch tracked his mark using all information. He found out dear Nick was trapped inside Park Street Station. The people inside were very aggressive, but to the Grinch their response seemed somewhat excessive. One by one they all fell to the floor, till the Grinch came face to face with a door. An old-timey vault, which was very secure. But the Grinch pushed on, he would need to endure. Finally, at last, he had found the detective, but from first impressions he looked rather defective. Now to leave the vault, Valentine in tow. Though, even with help, this is still kinda slow. Towards the end of which we meet Skinny Malone, the boss of this vault, who we intend to dethrone. The guards standing round, and Nick's client's daughter, all fall one by one as I stood and drank water. Nick was now free, ready and willing. But first, our reward from this ghost who was chilling. Nick asked us some questions to figure out details, as we recall the incident and all it entails. He had an idea, but wasn't quite sure, as the method and motive were pretty obscure. He did have a plan which involved lots of sneaking, but first was this door whose lock needed tweaking. Sadly for us, Nick couldn't penetrate this layer, so off went the Grinch to steal a key from the mayor. Once inside the house, we push in a switch that opens a room in which contents are rich. We comb over the room till both of us were spent, and found a cigar which carried Kellogg's scent. All I need is a reindeer, the Grinch looked around, but since reindeers are scarce, there were none to be found. But did that stop old Grinch? No, the Grinch simply said, if I can't find a reindeer, I'll make one instead. So he called his dog Dogmeat and took out some thread, and he tied a big horn to the top of his head. Then he showed the cigar to our brand new recruit. As the reindeer ran off, the Grinch left in pursuit. On the trail we end up with a really bad bargain, as we're attacked by a Deathclaw on the way to Fort Hagen. I spent a good while standing round like a willy, but I have to admit some of these deaths look real silly. When we arrived at the fort, I sent Dogmeat back, as I set forth to start our new plan of attack. We trudged through the halls as we're slowly advancing, stopping only to help the synths with their prancing. At the end of which we find our man, who reveals to us we were part of a plan. Turns out dear Sean has been spirited away, so I gave Kellogg a hug to make the man pay. With info in hand that should do the trick, we head to the roof to head back to dear Nick. But up in the sky, there was something surreal. A big old blimp from the Brotherhood of Steel. The Grinch saw this act and thought in his head, I'll head over there, get their help instead. At the airport, the Grinch had come to enlist, and was sent to see Dance, to whom he'd assist. Well, Dance and his team were overrun by ghouls, but given their health, they were nothing but fools. Dance thanked dear old Grinch and asked him to stay, to help with a job that wasn't too far away. For ArcJet's system had some tech that he needs. He ensured that the Grinch would be paid for his deeds. So off the Grinch went with Dance here behind, to find the item that they were assigned. The synths were here too, and plentiful in number, but one look at the Grinch put them all into slumber. Finding the tech and achieving his goal, the Grinch was given a whole other role. For he had shown some heavy appeal, so Dance welcomed the Grinch to the Brotherhood of Steel. His first task for them would be painfully long, as the Grinch had to clear the mutants from Fort Strong. The normal mutants fell easy as pie, but the mutant behemoth, well, it refused to just die. Its damage was high, and its health bar was higher, which meant drinking more water than most could acquire. But in the end, with a thunderous sound, the behemoth reared up and smacked its head off the ground. The rest of the pests all fell one by one. Even the missile launcher mutant was easily undone. We're thanked once again and turned to go free, as the leader has no idea where the Institute could be. But it's around this point that we go back to Nick, who has an idea of who might do the trick. Dr. Amarian Goodneighbor is here on our side. She could look through a brain to see where the Institute could hide. So we trudge through the memories of our partner's killer, like watching the plot of an old-timey thriller. Eventually we learn some vital information, for to enter the Institute we would need teleportation. Only one man knew how to do this, you see, but thanks to this trip we knew where he might be. The glowing sea filled with radiation, on top of which is the many aberration. But we meet up with Virgil, who is looking a lot greener. Turns out he was expecting someone a lot meaner. We strike up a deal to take out an enforcer, a top-of-the-line Institute-branded Corsair. We track him down to Green Tech Genetics, which had been overhauled with Gunner's aesthetics. The Gunners themselves posed little threat, not even enough to work up a sweat. The Corsair, however, took us far longer. As compared to Kellogg, this enemy was stronger. 5 whole minutes of menacing staring is how long it took to talk the Corsair into sharing. The chip from his brain was heavily encoded. We would need a professional, lest the data be eroded. Well, here comes the railroad, full steam ahead. But given this reception, I kind of want them all dead. But for now I held off on my unbridled rage, as their leader saw fit to take us backstage, to their ace hacker Tom, who could crack our chip. Now this is a cutscene I wish I could skip. It's entirely too long, but soon enough, we get our code once he's done with his fluff. Virgil is shocked that we managed our mission, and gifts to us his minor addition. The sketch he gave us will surely provide plans for a device that could get us inside. Back at the airport and we build our device, but if it will work, well, that's a roll of the dice. But first Elder Maxian gives us his plea. If we wind up inside, we're to find Dr. Lee. We're given a tape that can copy their data, then activate the machine that is clearly in beta. To our gleeful surprise, the machine was successful, though the lead up to this has been pretty stressful. The Institute, the place of synth-kind's creation. The Grinch took one look and said, "What an abomination." In the depths of this place, we meet with our son, though his response to us was certainly not fun. Turns out he's a robot, and this man is our child. With a plotline like this, things are about to get wild. He tasks us with meeting all the directors, but we end up sneaking into unexpected sectors. For the FEV lab holds a tape that is key to convincing our intentions to dear Dr. Lee. We convince her to leave and come back to the steel. Then we use our tape to see what it can reveal. Back on the airship, we have our next task: to rebuild a robot. That's quite a big ask. This involves us crafting a few little things from a handful of metal, some magnets and springs. Then off to the sea to deal with the kooks, as we plunder a building to find Prime his nukes. But the Elder must see us as soon as we can, for it turns out the dance was far more than a man. An Institute synth who had snuck into our ranks. Well, the time has come for us to give him our thanks. We're sent to stage an assassination, for all synths deserve eternal damnation. But when we're with Dance, we just can't do it. He was our mentor, we don't have the grit. So I ask him nicely to end it for us. I feel so frustrated, I just want to cuss. But with the job done, and dog tags in hand, we set out to purge the Institute from this land. But first there was one thing to which we had owed, as the Grinch set out to take out the railroad. The numbers were high and the damage outrageous, but I can't say their stand was truly courageous. Their numbers dropped off one by one, and as the last one dropped, my mission was done. Now that they were freed from their grand delusion, we set off to storm the top of mass fusion. With no time to waste, we grabbed up the key and ran through the synths while completely carefree. We jumped from the roof and fell through the sky, but thanks to our armor, we just couldn't die. This skipped a huge chunk of waiting around, so we go to the place where the reactor is found. We grab what we need, but we set off a trap. But if I'm being honest, these robots are crap. They do barely any damage, but neither do we. And we have to kill them to escape here, you see. Well, 10 minutes later, the sentry blows its top, as we run to the Pridwin and never must stop. With the last part installed, our robots complete, a force with which not even the Institute could compete. We march ever onwards, though hilariously slow. But at this point, we can just enjoy the show. We make our way across all the Commonwealth, though we meet with resistance since Prime can't do stealth. Then we nuke our way into the Institute's bunker, and head on inside like a good little spelunker. We massacre the synths and all in our way, as the Brotherhood of Steel would make them all pay. The job would end when we get to the reactor, as destroying that would be the last factor. On our way through, this synth is hardcore, as it picks up our ally and puts them straight through the floor. Through heavy resistance, we pushed back content, till it was time to leave our only present. What present is it? Well, I can say with aplomb, this present of ours, well, of course. It's a bomb! And what happened then? Well, in Boston they say that the mushroom cloud grew 3 sizes that day. With that last part, we can take a back seat, as we officially say now, it's mission complete. Remind me to never do one of these in rhyme again. That was an insanely long run. Between the constant need to grind early on for resources, money and materials, it's kind of a nightmare. But if you allowed yourselves mods or exploits to make this a faster process, then yeah, it's surprisingly fun. Now, I have to admit, this isn't exactly how this video began. My original plan was grinding to level 30 and then going all the way into Nuka World to steal Overboss Coulter's power armor. However, I ended up thinking that having to use the water gun there may have been something that people argued over, and I didn't want to put the validity of this run into question. So when I found out the Tesla armor mod was a thing that existed, I restarted the run from the beginning. This run has been in the works for literal months at this point, mainly due to the insane grind that I had to do twice, but also the Fallout wikis are kind of outdated on a lot of information since the DLCs have come out, but I digress. Happy holidays, folks. I'll see you all back here in January for a New Year's tradition.